All right, so first topic. Let's talk about some RoboCop and why it's the greatest movie in the 1980s. I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist. I had to do it.
Yeah.
I knew Gary would get that right off the
Yeah.
bat. I'm not
It's
sure
Yep.
Leo got it. So,
no, it's an unironically good movie. That's my only contribution to this joke.
um, well, I actually am one of those people that would probably argue it's up there at top two, top three best 1980s movies, but that's just me.
It's pretty good. My wife had only seen the remake for her experience with RoboCop, so we're in the process of getting a divorce.
Hey, you know what? No, I don't want to put any hate on the RoboCop remake. It was its own thing, and I think it was a wise decision not to try to like be a direct copy of the older RoboCop because I always say to people, Peter Weller to me is like he is RoboCop. So if you're going to do a like another like thing at all, like another version, never ever ever try to copy that particular version, that tone, and just be independent, do your own thing. Did it work? I mean,
I
a
mean, I
little
understand
bit.
that, but
I don't think
why
it.
be generic?
I enjoy it. I like watching it from time to time just for something different, but it's not the greatest.
My thing is, I enjoy. I
Wait, real
get
quick, while
not.
we're on the subject, Gary, I don't think I've ever just heard your out and out opinion of RoboCop. So real quick, just throw that in since we all gave our opinion.
Yeah, I liked RoboCop. I think one of the neat things about it, excuse me, is it shows, how corporate America can get their tentacles into a lot of different, places in government. And in this case, of course, it was, in the future, a dystopian, Detroit, and they pretty much owned. I can't remember the OCP, I think is what it was, or something like that. The company, and they pretty much owned the police force. So, what was interesting, I thought about it too, is it was very similar to the novel that Isaac Asimov wrote called I, Robot, where in this case, Peter Weller being a cyborg uh, could not shoot anybody or could not harm anybody from OCP, because they had rules, and that's very much like what iRobot, had. They had the first two rules in iRobot that a robot can't harm a human, nor can they. Or rule two, they cannot cause harm to a human. So, but when that one, I guess he was the chairman of the board or somebody had told RoboCop, at the very last scene that, he said, "You're fired." He told the guy, I can't remember the name of the guy. He was also in Total Recall, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. But anyway, we said, "You're fired." You could see his display, RoboCop's display that released him, from that rule that he couldn't shoot, a officer of OCP, and then of course he shot him and he flew out the window and all that stuff, So
Now, since I know I'm probably one of the only people that like really get into RoboCop, we're going to end the RoboCop discussion right there. And now let's talk about something that a lot more people nowadays that I know seem to like to talk about, and that's Alita Battle Angel. And more importantly, Gary, I could have sworn you just recently uploaded a video that I feel like I've watched 1,000 times at this point. Care to talk a little bit about this video?
with the video that we did for Trash Bash 2021.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually, the video itself, the basis of that video, or I would like to say the skeleton, if you want to call it that, the video is one you did, Splash Bang, that we took, and we added stuff to it for sure, but the original video was something you put together that I enjoyed a lot. But we kind of moved some things around in it because, Ray wanted it to flow better and stuff like that. Well, not flow better, but wanted it to be more applicable to the Trash Bash 2021. So he, the three of us, you and I and Ray, we put our heads together about 3 or 4 times on this, and finally we ended up turning the video in the day before the day before it was due. They were going to play it on their stream, that being the movie sellers stream, and it's I'm really pleased with that video. And I'm so pleased with it. As a matter of fact, I even put it on my website. So, yeah, really what it is, it's kind of your salute to the Alita Army, and plus our involvement with the movie seller.
Yeah, and Leo, this is the first time I've ever gotten to talk to you about that video since we've worked on it, and you generously contributed your voiceovers to like the opening little monologue there. So, what was your opinion of the video, having like seen it in its entirety?
It's great. It's way more concise than I actually thought it would be. I thought it was going to be like a long video going over, everything that the Alita Army has done and been through. But I actually like how concise it was, and it was very heartfelt, and you could tell. And I think that it's a good representation of what the Alita Army feels like. We represent on the internet, basically, our presence.
It's funny because I remember, man, we must have had like 6 or 7 like private chats, and when we were
Yeah.
we were trying to cram everything into that, and there were points where, and I'll just throw a little bit of the behind the scenes, I'll give you the little behind the scenes story of basically how this all kind of came together. So I'll start at the beginning, basically. Kind of going into something that Gary said, Muskogee Creek, he before we kind of brought him in, Max Tech, Ray, he contacted me, and he was like, we should really take a look at that video you did, and I'd like to kind of like put it together, kind of edit it into like a trailer, an Alita Army trailer. I think that'd be kind of cool. And I was like, okay, sure, let's do that. And I thought it was just going to be kind of a simple like patch job of just throwing in a few things, and then more and more kind of like got opened up to me. And then it's like, let's bring in Gary, and I was going to bring in John as well, but I think ultimately John maybe was just a little too busy to like give a consistent amount of input or whatever. So but it was nice. It was actually ended up being, I think, for the best, because me and Gary just kind of got on a good groove of communication there, and we were able to get it all done. But when Ray first listed off all of the things he wanted in there, I was a little skeptical if we could do it within, because first we thought it was going to be like a really short thing, like maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and then we thought it was going to, then he said no, sky's the limit, we can do pretty much anything we want. And then it was like, no, actually we can't, we got to shorten it a little bit. And I was like, oh crap, how are we going to get, we started small, we contained ourselves, then we just blew it up and threw everything but the kitchen sink into this video. And then we're like, now we got to downsize it, and we had to cut stuff and we had to rearrange stuff. And me and Gary, I think specifically Gary, had a lot of stuff I think that he wanted in there. And I don't know if you actually got everything in there that you wanted.
Yeah, I did.
Because I remember you said something to me about I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep this or whatever. Man, I have to cut it for whatever. But when I watched the final version, that particular iteration, I could be wrong here. Gary, would it be accurate for me to say it was probably our 20th iteration of that video?
Well, I think it would be the 20th, but I guess in terms of version numbers, because I guess it's part of the my profession, is to do change management and stuff like that. But the version number was 10, but there were a lot of little subversions in there. So yeah, it probably was around 20 different, kind of, little smaller versions of that to go along with 10 versions. So I didn't get the only thing I didn't get in there that I wanted in the movie seller video. Now I kind of modified it to put it on my, and it was just a small thing. I'll put it on my web page, on my YouTube page. Is that at the very end I wanted to scroll the credits, because people can see that a lot longer and they can appreciate who did it. But we were up against time, and Ray said, well, no, let's just make it a single frame and let it stay up there about 3 seconds, and then we're done. I said, okay, we can do that. That was pretty easy. But eventually I changed it back, for my YouTube page rather to scroll it. But but a funny story about that, you mentioned Splash Bang, how you were saying, how we were kind of trying to cut things out, wanted more stuff in. What was really funny about it, Ray had sent me that long list of, what he wanted in it and that kind of thing. And of course, I started going through it, and I'd put little green check marks by it for the stuff I'd done, this kind of stuff, And then finally, I think it was, I can't remember if it was our last meeting or the one before that, where he said this, he said, we really need to cut that time down, a whole lot, but I want to add this stuff. So, and I think, oh, okay, you want to cut the time down, but you want to add some more stuff, So, and we just kind of had a laugh about that, but the video turned out very well.
Well, and I think what I'd like to do is actually, I think what I'll do is I'll end up having, I'll drop a link, on my Twitter page to link to your channel, Gary, like for tomorrow, like if people catch this on the rewatch and they want to watch the video or whatever. But I speaking of time, I actually would like to just kind of get moving. So I think I'll skip playing the actual video.
Okay.
I mean, would you want to play it?
Oh no, it's up to you, man.
I think it'd be actually cooler if I just went ahead and linked it that way. You get some free views on your channel.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that.
And now, okay, so I actually have a very, very quick kind of completely out of nowhere question, but it's for Leo, and I just want to ask. So, Leo, what is the easiest, most comprehensive, or I guess concise way, I guess is more accurate, that you can explain where have you been? Because you've been gone a while, man.
I'm gonna need to see proof that you have a top secret security clearance in order to answer that question.
All right. That at least that was a quick answer. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
My answers are always quick.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't used to be. Let's put it like that. It used to be quite extensive. Anyway, now I actually would like to ask both of you, in general, what's could be multiple, but what's a good movie that you've seen lately? Maybe one you've watched before that you remembered how much you liked, or one you hadn't seen before and you just tried it out. I'll start with you, Leo. So,
The Empty Man.
Care to explain a little bit what this movie is?
Well, when I first saw it there on IMDb, I thought it was going to be like the Slender Man movie, which is trash, or the Bye Bye Man movie, which is also trash. And it was kind of marketed to be like those movies. And then you watch it, and then it ends up being something completely different. Without getting into spoilers, I would just say a little bit Lovecraftian, more cosmic horror. It's 2 hours and 17 minutes, which is very long for a horror movie. So if you can stomach that, and if you like cosmic horror type things, ancient evils and things like that, then it's actually a pretty entertaining movie.
Well, I cannot say I've actually even heard of that movie. I might have, I can't say that I haven't actually at one point seen like an image of it, but I know I've never seen an ad for it, like an actual trailer or anything. I have no idea, what it was until you just said it just a second ago. So
you think Alita was treated poorly? This movie is treated even more poorly. Apparently, Fox, 20th Century Fox, the same studio that I guess distributed Alita, was also the distributor for this movie. And I guess some talking head at 20th Century Fox gave this up and coming director all the money in the world just to make whatever movie he wanted, zero studio interference. So he did that, and he came up with this 2 hour and 17 minute cosmic horror, not masterpiece, but pretty damn good movie.
Is it
And
on
then,
like a Event Horizon kind of scale?
no, it's not like Event Horizon. It's a lot more subtle. It would be more closer to Lovecraftian than I guess Event Horizon would be. But it's kind
But
of
it's
in
not
the same
actually
genre.
a Cthulhu movie, right?
No,
Like
no. It's not a Cthulhu movie, no. But it's somewhere between, like, because it doesn't go as crazy as Event Horizon does, but it's definitely the same genre, cosmic horror. But anyway, yeah. So this guy goes and releases his film, but then 20th Century Fox gets bought out by Disney. This sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it, guys? Alita Battle Angel. And then Disney was, I guess, the new people in charge were like, no, you can't drop a 2 hour and 17 minute fucking horror movie. Cut it down. That didn't test well at test audiences, so they said, whatever, just release your 2 hour and 17 fucking minute movie. We're gonna release the trailer 1 week before the movie comes out and put it in theaters for only 1 week. And then it's never gotten a physical release since it came out in 2019. So Alita Battle Angel was treated like trash. This was treated like absolute dog shit. But it's actually a good movie. And I didn't know all that till after I saw the movie and got curious as to why. I had never heard of it.
so who has streaming rights to this? Did anyone buy the streaming rights?
Yeah, that's how I saw it. I had to go look at it. I had to go. I had to rent it. So I don't know. Let me go find out really quick. I'm looking it up.
All right. While he's looking that up, Gary, what have you seen lately, new or old or otherwise or whatever?
This is on Prime Video.
Prime Video? Okay. To anyone watching, check out Empty Man, Prime Video. If Leo recommends it, it's usually pretty darn good.
I'm gonna make a note of that, by the way.
And support it because it got treated like Alita. It has Alita syndrome. 20th Century Fox got bought by Disney, and then the movie was
I
treated
would like to
like
call that
dog shit.
Disney-itis, by the way.
Well, what other movie got treated like dog shit because of the merger? You know what I mean? I can't really think of any other than Alita and this one. And I didn't even know about this one till like 2
Well,
weeks
don't
ago.
forget there's all those other movies that were like they were greenlit, they were like in pre-production, and then they were straight up like just canned the moment like Disney took over. So that's
Yeah.
that happened too to a lot of movies as well. I think they said 200 projects got like axed because Disney
That's got to
just
be
didn't even
like
care.
the ultimate gut punch as a, I'm not a creative, but I can imagine.
Let's just be thankful like Alita actually made it out the door. Just imagine if that movie was sitting on the shelf somewhere.
It was for over a decade, and the fact that
Yeah.
it came out
No,
right
I'm talking
now,
about
right
like
before.
after it was filmed. I'm talking about after it was filmed.
No, I know
Like,
what you're saying, but I know I'm agreeing with you though on the fact that it was on the shelf for a decade and then came out right before the merger. That right there was just such pinpoint timing, or else it would have never been made. And thank God,
Anyway, go ahead, Gary. Like, launch us into what movie you've seen lately that really caught your attention.
Well, of course, outside of Alita Battle Angel, which I did see with my stepson and his wife. He graduated from the University of Connecticut last weekend. But anyway,
Congratulations.
yeah, appreciate. Yeah, he got his PhD.
Congrats,
in
congrats.
math. Oh yeah, got a PhD. I have to call him doctor now. But anyway,
Don't.
yeah, I do it as a sign of affection. I don't do it because for any other reason. But anyway, other than Alita Battle Angel, the Snyder cut of the Justice League. I mean, that movie. It's a really long movie. It's like 4 hours, but it's broken up into 6 different parts, and then there's a little bit of a kind of an addendum, a couple of addendum. I wouldn't call them vignettes, but they were
Epilogue.
short pieces. Yeah, and there was. I'm not going to spoil it in case anybody wants to see it, but I will say this about the Justice League: the theatrical release was nothing like the Snyder cut of the Justice League. The Justice League itself was, in my mind, and this is saying a lot because I used to say this about the original movie, The Avengers, being the best superhero movie ever, and that was just purely my opinion. But this one, I think, trumps that by a lot. I think the Snyder cut of the Justice League is a very good superhero movie. even for people that don't like superhero movies, there is something in it for them. They developed the characters very well. I particularly like the way they didn't treat Flash like some kind of damn kid. You know, he was more of a closer to the, I guess, the comic books than it was in the theatrical release. But yeah,
Well,
extremely good movie. I think I've seen it twice.
yeah, I'm right there with you. Two things actually. One is that I've seen the movie I think 6 times. And then funny enough, the thing about Flash in that movie that I think a lot of people that because okay, he's supposed to be the Barry Allen Flash. So there's two really main Flash
Yeah.
characters within DC Comics. They're the two most popular. It's Wally West Flash
Yes.
and Barry Allen Flash. Now, if you talk to any DC Comics fan, they've always got a favorite, right? They've always got a favorite, and it usually boils down to who did you like grow up with, like who was popular during when you grew up and were introduced to the character, or maybe it's because like that character has like your favorite Flash book. It's funny because I'm in a unique position where I grew up and the Flash that I was always exposed to was Wally West Flash.
Mm-hmm.
But I happen to think that most of the better Flash comic books are for Barry Allen. Now that is my own opinion, of course, and I'm sure that there might be people out there that will dispute that. But look at Flashpoint. If you look at Flash Rebirth, these are two really good Flash books. They're solid, classic Flash stories.
Yeah.
And they are Barry Allen Flash.
Yeah.
In the movie, though, ironically, I think what they did was they created an amalgamation. And I don't know if this was on purpose or just happened by accident, but I've read enough and watched enough Barry Allen and Wally West to know Wally West is usually he's the more like kind of lighthearted, almost like not intentionally maybe the comedic relief. Maybe he doesn't try to be, but he kind of ends up being the comedy guy of the two, like the more funny, goofy guy. And Barry Allen's a much more like takes himself very seriously, I think. And if you look at this Barry Allen, he seems to have aspects of both characters. So I would say that the theatrical version of Barry Allen in Zack Snyder's Justice League is probably a combination of both Wally West Flash and Barry Allen Flash.
Yeah, we're really stretching way back to ask me who I grew up with. But anyway, I grew up with Barry Allen, back in the 60s. And, I really didn't read too many comic books into the 70s, but Dan and I have talked about this, on one of my streams, how I guess Josh Whedon really mistreated the Flash in that theatrical release. And I think Zack Snyder did a better job here, in terms of the Flash himself, as a character. And I agree with you. He does have elements of both Barry Allen and Wally West, which it seemed like I don't know what the Josh Whedon version was. I mean, that was to me, that Flash to me was almost unrecognizable. I don't know. Dan might agree with me, but I think I think he was badly mistreated in the Justice League theatrical release, and that was one of the main issues I had with that movie.
Well, here's an interesting bit, and then after I say this, I want to get Leo's quick kind of thoughts on the Justice League Snyder Cut if he's seen it, but there's two big differences between Flash's character and the what people usually refer to as the Justice League of Joss Whedon and the Zack Snyder Justice League. In the Joss Whedon version, they completely cut out his role at the end of the movie. Now, I don't necessarily believe I've heard different varying stories, so I don't know which one's 100% true. But you know what they say? Usually, the details that are in the middle, if you look there, you'll usually find the truth. Kind of from all the different things. So I look at a lot of the different things I heard about, when they went back and did the reshoots. Apparently, one of the things they really took issue with was they didn't like the idea of Flash rewinding time in Zack Snyder's in that version of Justice League. They wanted to take that out of the movie because they wanted to save that ability, or him learning that ability, for another movie. What movie? I don't think they really know. I think they just wanted to save it so they can have it as like a big reveal of like one of his solo movies. Whether that was the proposed Flashpoint movie or whether that was the Flash movie they're filming right now, who knows? But the point was, they didn't, from what I heard, they didn't want that in the movie. So they're like, well, what do we do with the Flash? Let's make him the butt of a joke where he saves a completely pointless Russian family, become an actual butt of the joke line, like the entire thing. And let's take his arc and make it be like, hey, we're going to just have him save this family while Superman saves an entire building full of people. Now, the other thing that killed me, like in terms of like, just in my gut, the thing that really hurt me when I watched the Joss Whedon version of Justice League was what they did to Superman. Where they cut out all of the connections to Man of Steel, the symbolic references and like the little idiosyncrasies. They took out the Hans Zimmer score, which, I'm sorry, like, I don't care how much you love the Christopher Reeve Superman. The John Williams score from that does not belong with Henry Cavill's Superman. They're two different Superman characters.
Yeah.
And I always say this, by the way, this is, you'll hear me repeat this. I'll probably say this on a stream at some point in the future. So just know that I say this a lot, but this is generally how I view Superman's character. People always say, Zack Snyder doesn't understand Superman, or he broke Superman, or his Superman's trash, or whatever. I hear a lot of that, like, all the time. And my one of my first things I always point to people is, have you actually read the comics? Have you watched the animated shows? Have you experienced Superman, all these different forms of media, especially the comic books? Because in the comics, he has like an 80 plus year history. And throughout that, there's so many different writers, so many different artists that have all done different takes on Superman. Yes, there's some core components that always remain the same, but there are aspects of his character that are always malleable, that are always changing depending on the writer. And the way I view it is this. Okay, you can make an argument that Luke Skywalker in the Disney Star Wars trilogy is not how Luke Skywalker is supposed to be, because within the continuity of George Lucas's Star Wars, there's only been one version of Luke Skywalker. And that was Luke Skywalker from episode 4, 5, and 6. That is a single like portrayal of him. So we only have that one portrayal to draw from as reference, and that's it. So he should act like that to be in continuity with that. The difference with the Superman and Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and Justice League, or when I say Justice League, just anyone who's listening, except that I am only referring to Zack Snyder's Justice League, because I'm never going to reference Joss Whedon's Justice League as some sort of like canon. It's just not the way it works. And I think most fans feel that way. But if you look at that story arc, and Snyder said this during the press tour of Batman v Superman, he said, what I really wanted to do was I want to kind of like put Superman through like a crucible, so that, he kind of comes out the other end being the Superman we kind of like all know and love. And what happens at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League? Like at the very end, he's walking down the street with his glasses, his trench coat, and he opens up the thing, and it's the classic Superman thing. Yeah, he's got the black suit, but that is comic book accurate, by the way. I mean, when he resurrects in the comics, he has a black suit. So, that's just the way it is. But in terms of like the story arc, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League, that version of Superman is just as relevant as Christopher Reeve is. Christopher Reeve is just one, like that's just one version of Superman. The John Byrne kind of, Louise Simonson, those Superman stories, from the 90s and the 80s, that's one version of Superman. If you look at Superman, New 52, 2011, that's one version of Superman. Superman from the early 2000s, like by Brian Azzarello with Superman for Tomorrow, or Alan Moore's Superman. Those are all different takes on Superman. They all have similarities, but they're all different. So that's why, if you're going to be critical of it, I feel like, go back, do your history, do your research, look into this stuff, so you actually know, reference points. There are books, that were made in the last 10, 15 years that are comic books, and there are scenes, Superman scenes that are pulled right out of that and put in like Man of Steel, for instance. What's that one that one scene where it's young Clark, and he's showing him, Pa Kent's showing him the spaceship, the little drop pod that he came in on,
Yeah.
in the barn, and and little Clark says to Pa Kent, he says, "Can I keep pretending I'm your son?" And he says, "You are my son." That scene a little bit different. It's a little bit different, but that's in a comic book. They just took that straight out. So, I mean, and then the dialogue where he says, "You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards." It's Grant Morrison, All-Star Superman. I mean, like, they're pulling from the books. They're using them as reference points. The only difference is they're setting it in a world that's a little bit more realistic, a little bit more grounded. It's our world. Like, it's superheroes in our world versus if you look at Marvel, that's more of like almost like a little bit of, I would say to some extent, a fantasy world a little bit, because it's not overly realistic. Like, it's a very kind of cartoony world. It's almost like a caricature of our world. But that's done on purpose because they want to do a lot less. I mean, you could argue there's some serious stories in the Marvel like films, but Marvel films are overly formulaic, if you ask me, and that's not necessarily a detriment, because you can go into them, you're going to get a good hour and a half to 2 hours of solid, like, kind of fun and popcorn fun and stuff like that. But don't be expecting any kind of deep introspective journey. I mean, stuff like that, there are other movies that will provide it. And I kind of like that DC tried starting off under Zack Snyder and guys like David Ayer and stuff. They try to do more serious, grounded, kind of, non-traditional takes on it. I like ambition. I like that it takes you to unique places. But that's just how I feel. And I think that's why I just, for me, my top two favorite superhero films is the Zack Snyder Justice League movie. I think is either it's first place or it's tied with Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2. I've watched that movie so long. And in short, I just think it's one of the most perfectly executed superhero films. It literally hits all of the check boxes for what it's trying to do and accomplish. And it's a fantastic hero's journey. It's got a fantastic beginning, middle, end, and it's got some fantastic cinematography. I use that word a lot to describe that movie because I do believe it, but that's a short, comparison. That's what I consider the two, like, top two tier, is the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2 and Zack Snyder's Justice League, to me, are like two of the top, like, superhero films. Now, enough about what I think. Leo, just give me your thoughts on Zack Snyder's Justice League. Have you seen it?
Well, as you know, I'm not a superhero fan. I'm more of the anti-hero fan, which is why I love Dragon Ball. It makes fun of all the superhero tropes and goes against them, but I'm not gonna lie. I like
a lot of
raw, your own raw strength, and that's all that matters. We're not out here to take ourselves importantly and save the world. We're just regular dudes that are trying to be warriors. But going back to Justice League, what I did like is that it felt less like a superhero movie and felt more like an epic. When I was watching it within the first 10 minutes, I said, this feels like Return of the King. I don't know exactly why I got that vibe, because it doesn't necessarily look like Return of the King in that many ways, but you just get that feeling like, and I got that feeling with Justice League more than I did watching The Hobbit. The Hobbit movies it came out with for no reason a couple of years ago. I didn't really get that vibe from The Hobbit, but I did get that vibe from watching Justice League. It felt like an epic, like watching The Lord of the Rings. And I've always heard that superhero films are modern Greek mythology, and I've never really understood that. That sounds kind of like ridiculous to me, but I kind of got that from this movie. It felt like that's what Zack Snyder was going for, telling a modern day Greek mythological story and putting it on screen. So that's my take for it. I liked it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Return of the King, because I have the scans that went around on the internet from photos taken of the storyboards for the original outline of the entire Justice League saga by Zack Snyder and his writing crew. And one of the things he used to describe, when he was trying to describe to people who could not fully picture the idea in their heads, he'd say, just imagine it's a superhero world, but it's like we're going on the scale of Lord of the Rings. Like, that was a word he used all the time to describe. Like, he wanted this big, epic, like, myth type story. So I think he like just seeing part one of that, because there were supposed to be two more movies. That there was a 5-film arc. There were two more Justice League movies, part 2 and part 3, and as of now, we can only assume that we're only going to get the first part of that, like unless some miracle happens and we get parts 2 and part 3 like 5 years down the line. But I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I think it would. I mean, it might, but it would take a lot of moving parts and a lot of egos to kind of be put in check. But the point being, just seeing part 1 of that, I think it's like, my gosh, this really was supposed to be like an epic, And I think the reason I gravitate toward that stuff is, and I know, Leo, you've heard me say this before, but I'm a huge admirer of Jack Kirby's Fourth World. Like this concept of the king of comics. He's at Marvel and he's working on Thor, and he's like, he goes to Marvel and he's like, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, this is not exactly what he would have said to them, but I mean, he's pitching them basically this idea like, hey, we could, superheroes, our comic books, the stories we tell in comics and fiction, we are creating the modern mythology. We are creating the modern folklore, legends, myths, and all these Superman is the modern day Hercules. This is the way it is. So why not start treating this stuff like it and do it on a proper scale? So he's like, what if we killed off the old gods, quote unquote, the old gods, meaning Thor and Odin, and the destruction of Asgard, and the death of the old gods and the death of the old world brought forth all these new gods, and we'd create all our own new set of gods that would become our modern mythology, right? Just like we know of Zeus and Poseidon and Hades and all these different deities from Greek and mythology. Of course, there's Egyptian mythology, you got Celtic mythology, you got Japanese folklore, creation myths, technically mythology. You've got Norse mythology, you got mythologies from all over the world, but we don't really have an American mythology. And comic books are basically that. So he wanted to really take that to its fullest. And the Fourth World is even for back then, it was ahead of its time. It was ambitious. It was incredible. So I don't know. I wish more people would I want to see more people take that ambition, take that initiative and that leap and say, let's chart, the uncharted course that no one's really taking right now and push the envelope. They're just not interested. They want to do popcorn stuff all the time. And, and of course, I'm going to quickly throw a bone out there to all the people that are like, well, but don't forget to mention, I'm not going to forget to mention it. Don't worry. I know my audience. I know people that listen to me and Leo and Gary. And yes, I'm aware that Kishiro is doing the exact same thing, has done the exact same thing with his Alita manga, which would have been, if they actually got their act together in the movie scene, would have been another epic saga of films that basically would have been a sort of I think a modern sci-fi Odyssey kind of mythology type thing. Maybe not on the a proper mythology, but that epic scale, like Lord of the Rings and stuff, when you really get deep into the manga and stuff. So Leo, before I move on, do you want to run on that point for a second? Because I know you were a big admirer of the manga.
Talking about for Alita?
Yeah.
Well, if they properly adapted, it would just be closer to Halo, to be honest with you, in very many ways. The movie kind of did run in that direction a little bit with The Fall, taking a lot of inspiration from Halo. But if they adapt it properly, it'll be, honestly, maybe Snyder should just do it. Maybe Snyder should open up a studio and be like, hey, guys, whoever wants to make this fucking movie, I'll fund it. There you go. And you can make it a fucking 6-hour movie.
Don't tempt some people out there. There's some people out there that want Snyder to do everything. Let me be honest with you.
Tell him to open his own studio and fund it. There you go.
He has his own studio. He has what's it called? The iron, is it called the Iron Quarry? Stone Quarry. That's it. Stone Quarry. That's his production company. So he has his own thing. It's just, for him, it's he doesn't have an immense amount of funding for any one project at a time. Usually he has to partner with someone. Right now, he has a big deal going with Netflix, and he's got his own universe at Netflix, his own zombie universe. So
this is not getting political in any way, but we've seen the comic book industry recently go to a more independently funded model. Maybe film should go that direction because I'm not going to lie, a lot of big, Hollywood AAA films, I don't find them entertaining at all. You know what I mean? I'm gonna sound like a hipster. I've come full circle from my young self who hated independent films, but honestly, a lot of the smaller movies are more interesting because they can take more chances and do things that you couldn't get away with in the major Hollywood films. The Empty Man being an example. You know what I mean? I mean, this guy was able to make the story the way that he wanted to make it, and it turned out far more interesting than any of the AAA, big Hollywood horror movies out there. And maybe that's just the way the film industry should go. And starting with Zack Snyder making his Snyderverse, and somehow someone funding an Alita movie outside of Disney.
Well, real quick, before we continue with that, I do know that Gary's going to have to go soon. So, Gary, I'm going to throw this point to you that we're talking about, and I just want you to kind of roll with it as long as you want, so you can kind of have the floor for a bit.
What do you mean in terms of
in terms of, I think what Leo is the point we're on right now is what Leo brought up about the whole is the future of the film industry still with these big corporations since they keep bumbling things, or do you believe, as Leo is hoping, that you're going to see a lot more independent things line up, especially with the emergence of the streaming market, where there's a lot more independent creators that get a lot of creative control. So take that point and kind of just run.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think one of the things about if you have a lot of independent filmmakers, you don't have these giant corporations that are worried about their, about the perception of their company or their brand or whatever, and what that mean, what the movie might do to their brand. I think Dan's right. I think if smaller companies, they have more freedom. They can put together a movie that without worrying about public perception. Now, certainly they're going to want people to watch their movie, of course. But, in terms of, take Disney's a good example with Alita. One of the things I think that that bothers them a lot is that Alita doesn't really fit into their overall movie schemes about the kind of movies they put out. For instance, even if you look at the Avengers, some of those movies, there's a lot of jokes in there. There's a lot of kind of like little funny asides and things like that. It's a lot lighter. Whereas Alita, especially if it's shot like what you see in the manga, that is going to be a dark movie. It's not going to be something that's lighthearted, like, say, Josh Whedon's Justice League. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be more like, I know one of Den's favorite movies and mine too is 300. It's going to be more like that, I think. And I think smaller filmmakers can do that kind of thing without fear, as opposed to a larger corporation. But another thing about streaming too is I think cinemas will be around. There's no doubt about it. But I think now that, one of the things that the pandemic has done is that, people have really latched on to streaming now, and they watch a lot of movies, on Netflix or on Hulu or Amazon Prime or something like this, or Prime Video rather. And they come to the realization that, I don't have to go to the movies to see a good movie. I can sit here right in my home and I can watch a good movie, So I think that this might open up cinemas a little bit more to more independent, kind of filmmakers. Maybe when I say independent, I don't mean really super low budget, but I mean somebody that has made good movies, but they're not, say, directly affiliated with, say, Disney, say, or Universal or one of them. That they have to partner with somebody like you were saying, because that's what I think is probably going to happen once we start getting past more and more, getting past the pandemic. I think that's what's going to happen.
So I think I'm gonna have one more question for you, Gary,
Okay.
and then like if you've got to go, then that's okay. You can go ahead and head out. But if you can stay longer, obviously I'll be happy to have you. But either way, so my question for you is this: um, in your opinion, um, I'm trying to keep a straight face here.
Uh-oh.
Um, this is a little bit of, I think you'll understand why I'm asking this question very shortly. It's like it's an inside joke with anybody who's
All right.
familiar with you, Leo, and the rest of the gang. Um, do you believe that you can be just as big a fan of Alita without having read a single page of the manga?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can be a huge fan of Alita. Now, I will say this, the manga kind of gives you a lot of backstory, especially if you read the Mars Chronicle, and it kind of gives you a little more depth. It kind of gives you a different perspective of Alita because, in the movie, what we saw, Alita is basically like two people almost. I mean, for lack of a better, kind of description. But, in the beginning of the movie, she's this little teenager. She's having fun. She's eating Hugo's bought her some chocolate, and she learns how to play street motor ball. And she's just almost like a typical happy teenager. And then bad shit happens to her, And at the end of the movie, she's a little bit more like manga Alita, at the very end of the movie, especially when she stabs Victor. When she runs him through with that Damascus blade, that she's a little bit more like manga Alita. But the thing about the manga is there are sections in there, and let me just say this: you watch Alita the movie, and you absolutely love her. I mean, she's great. She's she has a lot of abilities. She's pretty. She's just an overall likable, kind of like a young woman. But if you read the manga, there are sections in that manga where you can't stand her. I mean, she's just, in some cases, she's almost, she's not psychopathic, but she's a killer. She's
Efficient and ruthless.
yeah, that's right. Exactly. Relentless and ruthless. So I think if you read the manga, you get a deeper take of the character of Alita. That a person is not just one thing all the time. They're not like some monolithic, individual. They're always like, this is what their personality is all the time. But you read that manga, you get that feeling. Watching the movie, you only kind of get a snapshot, I think. Now, I think the movie was pretty true to the manga. There's some differences and this sort of thing. But yeah, I think that, I think you can be a big fan of Alita without watching the movie, because I know I was, because when
You
the
mean
movie,
manga?
no, I mean the movie. The first time I saw the movie first before I started.
Well, the question was about like if you've only watched the movie and you haven't read the manga.
Well, that's what I was about to say. I was going to say that when I first saw Alita last year, it was March of last year, that I became a fan right there, and I hadn't read one page of the manga. I didn't start reading the manga until last summer. So, there was like a 3-month stretch right there that I didn't read the manga, and I was a huge fan, Now, what I will say is that having read the manga, now I have a kind of a deeper understanding of Alita, the character Alita. And I think it just sort of increased, my, kind of commitment, or not commitment, but,
appreciation.
Appreciation, being a big fan and stuff like that. It just added to it, So, and it got to the point when I was reading some of the manga, I couldn't put it down when I was starting to read it. I mean, I just had to keep reading it, So, but I was a big fan without reading the manga, but I'm a bigger fan now that I've read the manga.
Now, real quick, I'm going to give Leo a chance to respond back to this because I don't know if you recall, Leo, but I might have been. It's been a while, so it could very well have been almost a year ago that we had this conversation. We were on a live stream, we were all talking, and you were in a debate with someone about it, not about like the validity of someone being a fan or not, but more like you were like, if you had it your way, you would have everybody, like you would force everybody to read the manga because you're like, it's so good and people don't know what they're missing. And you're like, I would force them to read it. So you still have the same opinion, or do you think that people can go about just watching the media and still be fine?
Well, I was being hyperbolic, of course, just for a comedic effect. But no, actually, I've already made the post several times, and I've even made polls about it on Twitter, talking about how, of course, you can still be a fan without having read the manga. I mean, they're so different. You know what I mean? It's of course, what I've said, it's a very precise movie. It hits the same story, in more or less, but the tone is completely different. And I guess the conclusion it arrives at is different too because of that deviation. So of course there's going to be a lot of things. Like if you're a movie fan, and this is me coming from the movie to the manga in my own experience, I thought I was going to read one thing and got something completely different. So yeah, there's going to be people who are going to expect that same tone they see in the movie and then read the manga and they get slapped in the face with something like, whoa, this is weird. That's especially a Mars Chronicle.
So basically, if you're going from the movie and let's say you accidentally picked up a copy of Mars Chronicle instead of going to the original manga first and even just following through, it's basically like going from like a Saturday morning cartoon to the Twilight Zone.
No, it's like going from Saturday morning cartoons to, I don't know, fucking Halloween, Scream. No, a David Cronenberg movie. There you go. Because there's a lot of body horror. How about that? So The Fly.
Okay.
Or The Thing. There you go. The Thing. That's a good one. There's some of that shit in there.
It's a classic.
But yeah, that it's just that it's a whole different thing. It's a lot more melancholic. It's a lot more up and down because it's anime. The movie kind of has like a more even Western type tone. You know how anime does that thing to where it gets really melancholic and then has these weird fucking anime Japanese jokes and shit. It does that a little bit more in Last Order than it does anywhere else. Mars Chronicle is not really any comedy. And then the original manga, it's a little bit more even than Last Order would be when it comes to comedy. But yeah, it just has its moments where it's like, damn, there's no bright side to this. And like I said, one of the reasons why I like Dragon Ball is the anti-hero element. I really like the anti-hero element. You know what I mean? My wife has taken up watching shonen, like My Hero Academia, Hunter x Hunter, and Demon Slayer. And I watch their main characters, and I see, because all shonen was based on the Dragon Ball formula, and I see what they're trying to go for, that archetype thing, but it's just too black and white, too, I don't know. I don't like the characters. You know what I mean? Whereas Alita kind of gets it right for me, where it's like, I don't know. It's hard to explain without going into specifics, but it's going to be very different. You're not going to get that pure, oh, she's a great superhero thing. There's going to be times where she's kind of painted as the antagonist, if anything. There's not going to be times where you get a clear answer for what was the right thing, what was the wrong thing. It's just, it's fitting that the manga is in black and white because everything is painted in shades of gray. There you go.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a perfect description. I was about to say, it's not a 0 or 1 proposition with Alita when you read the manga. I mean, what you said about shades of gray is perfect then, because it's kind of like she kind of evolves and devolves all the way through the whole movie. I mean, the whole manga, rather, even through the Last Order. I mean, she's not always good, but she's not always pure bad either. She's just kind of in the middle sometimes. So
she's doing what she thinks is the right thing at the time, or the right thing for herself. Not even necessarily the right thing; it's the right thing for herself. Like the whole Barjack arc, there really was no like over. There was no. She wasn't. There was like no grand goal for her. It was basically just, I want to save Ito. That's it, and I'll just do what I had to do to get by day to day.
Yeah.
That's really it. There was no overwhelming goal of I'm going to save this or I'm going to do that.
Yeah,
there really was none of that. It was just like, I'm doing what I got to do to get by day to day. And if it takes me being a ruthless killer at this moment, that's what I'm going to be.
Yes. There was a little bit of a comedy though in that Bar Jack art when she met. I guess when she met Figure Four, who was my favorite guy in the manga, and
Oh yeah.
and that I guess the other I can't remember the other guy's name that was kind of a
Gary, don't forget, Leo likes to call Figure Four Keanu Reeves.
I think that would be a great crossover because we can use the fame of John Wick to get eyeballs in our movie.
Well, I kind of like Jason Momoa, as as Figure Four.
I don't. I'm sorry. No.
Yeah, but anyway, the idea though, that one comedic scene I thought was funny is when that butterfly showed up and she literally emptied her weapon trying to get. And Figure Four, she shoots the hell out of the wall or whatever it was, and he says, "What the hell was that?"
Dude, I love that.
To
scene.
me, that was funny. That was I laughed at that.
Here's the thing. Here's what I would say to your original question. No, I do not think that you have to read the manga to be a real fan. I'll call anyone a real fan. I think it's Vladdy or something that hasn't read the manga, and
right.
I don't see him as any less of a fan. And for a while,
it was a joke because I remember it was an old debate that we had on a live stream, and I forgot who, but someone brought up the point that they're like, I can't stand talking to Alita fans that don't know anything about the manga. I wish they would all read the manga. And then you and him or her or whoever it was that you guys started getting into a debate about it. That's why I brought up the question.
No, I get that. But to finish answering the question, no, I don't think you have to be a fan, but I do think that it's so good that once you get into it, you're going to be like, why the fuck didn't I do this earlier? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm 45 years old and I've never tried a fucking pepperoni pizza. Why didn't I try this shit earlier? You know what I mean? What was I doing for the last 45 years?
Is that an admission of guilt right there, Leo?
Maybe.
Well, Lee, just tell me that, it's okay if you haven't tried pepperoni, but if you've tried pineapple before pepperoni, then we've got an issue.
Here we go.
Well, I have no comment.
Yeah.
We're going to leave it right there. We're not going to say another thing. We'll leave it ambiguous for the folks at home. Now, since we're on the subject of manga, I wanted to bring up briefly this is a subject to me that is quite interesting because it involves a field that I'm heavily invested in, which is the comic book field. So I don't know if you guys pay attention to these type of things, but the sales numbers for the North American physical media sales for kind of pop culture stuff, meaning books and stuff. That includes any type of pop culture, physical media or written thing from any genre or location around the world that's just released and sold in the United States, basically, or North America or whatever. The top 20 things were all manga. Now, that used to be split between manga and mainstream, or I guess not mainstream, but DC, Marvel comics, stuff like that. Not a single DC or Marvel comic book. These are characters like Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, the X-Men, Avengers. None of them. It's all manga. Top 20 bestsellers for trades and hardbacks and stuff. So, Leo, why do you think don't get so much in because there is a political side to this that I know you are aware of as much as I am, but leaving that aside, in terms of speaking on the content, why do you think on the content side of things, why do you think manga just resonates so much more with currently the North American readership than traditional superhero comics nowadays?
Well, I don't think that it resonates anymore. I'll just tell you just like this. Number one, there is a political side to it, and I'm just going to sum that up in a quick sentence. Don't split your audience. That's it. Don't split your audience.
Perfectly said.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what's happening. And the anime side, the Japanese, I mean, you've seen their culture. They're extremely, extremely business and efficiency oriented. So if they see something isn't working, they'll drop it like a fucking hot potato and do what is working. So you have one side that's hyper focusing their audience and the other side that's splitting their audience and getting on Twitter and calling people names. So, I mean, of course, we're going to see things change,
Yeah, I would like to say, too, just before I go, I guess, is that is probably an element of it being kind of a discovery type thing. People are, kind of maybe becoming more and more aware of the manga, and I know, Alita, the manga has been around for 30 years, since the very early 90s or 1990, actually, I think. And a lot of times with comic books, now I haven't read a lot of comic books in the past 50 years, but I will say this is that my impression of them are just hearing folks that do read comic books tell me about it. It's almost like they're reading the same thing over and over and over, and they're kind of, they're kind of already know it. It's not, they're not, it's like they're rebooting the same thing in a lot of comic books.
Well, I'll say this to add to what you're saying, kind of to add to what you're saying, what I'm saying. It's the same thing in anime. I mean, Dragon Ball's been going since 1984. One Piece is at like book 1,001 billion, like literally like over 1,000 stories in that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's not the fact that comics are old and outdated, because you can tell good stories with the same characters over and over and over again. The problem is, I think, like I said, the number one thing is one audience is being split and fragmented into many, many, many pieces. I mean, even the independent side of the comic books is split and fragmented, whereas the other side is hyper focusing their audience. They're literally just saying, I have no agenda. They're not even on Twitter, most of them, cussing people. They don't even have Twitters, a lot of them. They're literally just saying, they just literally, and part of it's unethical. The fact that they pretty much sit in sweatshops, more or less, and they crank this shit out, and they try to look for what works, and that's it. And I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm not going to say they're better than us because they do that, because like I said, there's somewhat of an unethical side to anime and manga, to the fact that these guys aren't paid a lot. I mean, if you know anything about the production of Dragon Ball Super from back in 2015, you'll understand like how bad these conditions can be, and how much that can even affect the show or the anime or the manga. You know what I mean? But so I'm not saying they've completely got the answer, because their artists are completely overworked and underpaid, and they have to crank this shit out like South Park, within days. It's ridiculous. But they're focusing their audience, and they focus on what works. And the other side is just kind of like, like your kid, when they take a year off from college and they just kind of float around the world doing whatever the fuck and not making any money. That's what our comic book industry is doing right now. They're taking their gap year in college and just floating around doing drugs, not making any money. That's it.
So basically what you're saying is it's like a bunch of kids on study abroad are trying to take their tests back at home while they're studying abroad.
No,
and the efficiency and the productivity is down because they're not fully focused on what's effectively supposed to be being done.
I would take it even more hyperbolic. They're like not doing anything and expecting to be paid money for it. They're literally.
Well, I was trying to be a little nicer, but see, you're cutthroat, more cutthroat than me. So I'm but a little bit, I guess because I am to some extent, I'm a writer and a creator myself. So I guess I'm a little less, vindictive or less aggressive. But I think you're like, I don't care. I'm not going to pull any punches. So.
Well, here's my thing, and it's not all. Of course, there's probably some amazing shit coming out of the West right now that I just don't know about because it's not really my sphere. But just going by what I've observed, like I said, it's literally like our industry, not necessarily individual creators, but our industry is just taking their gap year and not doing shit, just kind of coasting off of mommy and daddy's money at the big movie studios, Marvel and Disney. Whereas, the Japanese side, they're working 7 days a week, going to cram school after that, you know what I mean? And they got their little suicide nets under the sweatshops, and they're like, no, you cannot commit suicide. You have 5 more days of work. And that's really what's happening. They're just focused on making the money and cranking out the product to the detriment of some of their artists, and the other one's just not really caring about that. When you get on Twitter and call people names, you can't expect them to give you money right after that. You know what I mean? That's just the bottom line.
Well, one thing about comic books too that I've noticed, not so much from reading them, but from what I've seen, on the internet, is one of the things they have done to kind of be a little more diverse with their storytelling is they've created different universes. In other words, you'll have a Superman in one universe and a different version of him in a different one, and yet a third one you'll have a different Superman. So they'll have different stories for each. But I think the manga. I think one of the things about it, it's new. Not new. It's not new, but I think it's being discovered too more than it was, say, back in the 90s. Anyway, that's just what I see. But anyway, Splash Bang, I want you to I want to thank you for inviting me on because this has been a really good discussion. I really enjoyed it, but I'm sorry, I'm going to have to. I got to get up early tomorrow morning. So
No, it's all good, man. I thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me and Leo here.
yeah, and Leo and I, I sent Dan a DM, about what it looks like when you approach the speed of light, blue shift. He and I are going to put together a video about, Alita, Flash, and perhaps that character in the MCU, Quicksilver, and maybe Superman, because they all go really fast, so we're going to maybe can do something like that then. So,
All right, man.
Okay, guys, y'all have a good one. And
too, man.
And thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely, anytime.
Okay.
Now, Leo, to kind of wrap up this like little quick, tangent on manga, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I like you or someone that's I know for a fact is clearly read more manga than I have, because I have not read hardly any. I've maybe read one thing, like the manga form of it, I should say, because I mainly what I usually do. Because I'm always pressed for time. Like I have a very busy, like regular schedule. So what I usually do is I usually try to like watch the anime. And if the anime is super, super like intriguing to me, I'll try to go pick up the manga and read as much of it as I can. But usually that it has to be a pretty darn good series to make me go back and almost, I hesitate to use this word because sometimes the experience is very different between the anime and the manga. But I'm very hesitant to double dip on a story like that in both print and in the actual like animation form, unless it just really is like jaw dropping. So as someone who kind of is more aware of the anime and manga scene than possibly the kind of comic book scene, I just want to ask, like, if you were like, okay, if you and yes, I'm aware of the overworking issue, like that's something I'm aware of. But that aside, why do you think, if you look at the Japanese and the efficiency of the good quality content, coming out, why do you think they're so much better at getting good content? I mean, you can work fast and still produce bad stuff. Why do you think they're producing so much good stuff versus, like, why haven't they run into the same problem? Like, what's making them produce so much good quality stuff, in your opinion?
Well, I will say that I am very much an outsider to the manga as well. I've really only read 2 comic books, and that's Alita Battle Angel's the only one I've read all the way through, and Dragon Ball is the only one I've read. Not every page, but it's been so many fucking years that I probably have read every page by now. But that's basically it. But I would say
that counts. I mean, those are both really long, so
I would say from, like I said, my perspective, I like breaking down why things happen, and I like learning why things happen. For one thing, that's why I guess I kind of know about this. And then from another perspective, when it comes to double dipping between things, I like comparing things. I don't know why. Maybe it's autism. Who knows? But I would say that the reason why the Japanese are doing better is because, number one, their culture is, like I said, geared to efficiency. It has always been. I mean, even look at World War II. If they're not winning a battle, then they're literally dying to just make a stalemate. You know what I mean? Iwo Jima, we won that battle, but took more casualties. Like, the Japanese are, if anything, but efficient. And that's just their culture. And then number 2, it's, what else do they really make? I mean, let's be honest. The comic industry, the comic industry. Well, I'm just saying in general, like when you in a general comparison, the comic industry is such a small part of the U.S. industry, of the U.S. entertainment industry. You know what I mean? It's just now in the last decade or so become larger with the films. But when it comes to anime, I mean, that's like all of Japan. I mean, think about it. You put one person in your family towards making widgets, and your family will be able to crank out this many widgets. Japan, on the other side, puts their whole entire family towards making widgets. So they're able to crank out 5 times more widgets. So it's not necessarily that anime in general, I would just guess, this is just a guess, I wouldn't say that anime in general is better at cranking out consistency, other than the fact that they are geared towards efficiency and what works, and not geared to just Twitter dunking all day. But because there's just so much more of it. You see what I'm saying? There's so much fucking anime. I'm married to a weeb. My wife is huge into anime. and comic books to a lesser degree.
Well, that's
There's
why I value
so
your opinion,
much-
because you're exposed to someone who's in on this stuff, like watching
Yeah.
it all the time. You know,
There is just so fucking much anime in the world. You know what I mean? That you're going to find something good. And I've seen some memes of some like really, really shit anime out there that the worst of our comic book industry makes it, you know what I mean? It makes the worst of our comic book industry look like Shakespeare. You know, there's some terrible, terrible, god awful anime out there, but there's just so much of it. You know what I mean? And like I said, in general, the Japanese are geared more towards efficiency. So it might just look like, you know, on the outside that anime is just better. But I would say it's pretty even. I don't know.
you know, I'm gonna throw out a theory. This is a theory I have. I haven't done enough studying on and like looking into this, but I think there's enough truth and facts out there that I feel confident that there's enough stuff backing up this theory. You know, that there could be some real truth to it. But I believe one of the reasons why manga and anime is way more successful, because look, what are the biggest movies in the world right now? They're superhero movies, right? Now, anime is basically the biggest type of like animation around the world, right? In terms of TV animation from any country or anywhere, anime, that genre, that style of doing things, and or just adapting Japanese material in general to animation, even if a foreign country does it, anime in general is like they're the kings. Just like blockbuster movies, superhero movies, maybe they might be coming to an end. I don't know. For all I know, they could be wrapping up their reign. But in the last couple of years, comic book or superhero movies have been like king of the blockbuster, you know, cinema world. With those two industries running so strong, manga sells like crazy alongside anime booming. Superhero movies, big success, very little impact on sales. I believe the core component of why there's this massive difference has to do with the fact that when you go watch an anime, like I'll go ahead and tell you the anime I'm watching right now got recommended to me by a good friend of mine. He's recommended a lot of good animes to me. It's one that I'm trying to kind of binge through in a couple of days if possible. It's really short from what I understand. It's called Parasite the Maxim. And I believe, from my understanding, this just like you know everything else, it's based on a manga. I guarantee you, if you watch this, and if I end up watching it and really liking it by the end of it, it might be one of those things where I'm going to go pick up the manga because I want to go read the source material that it came from. I want to read the original thing and see if there was any extra story in there that maybe I missed, something like that. Much like I did with Death Note, you know, where Death Note was such a huge impact on me. I immediately went out, was like hunting down a complete collection. And to my luck, the timing of it was perfect. They just put out like a big collected volume of like 1,000+ pages of like the entire Death Note story. So I think there's a bonus book though that I haven't got yet that I need to track down. But the point is, you know, like I was like, okay, I love this story. I'm gonna go read it now. I want to go read like and see if there's like extra scenes that I like deleted scenes that didn't make it in the anime. But if you go watch a Batman movie, you watch a Superman movie, if you watch, you know, Spider-Man movie or whatever, they're nothing like the comic books that are out now. So why would you buy the comic books if they're nothing like the movies? You know, movies are what's making people interested in them. And pretty much the same core audience that watches these movies, a good portion of them also watch anime, and a good portion of them, and the reason I know this is because, you know, look at Demon Slayer. It's like selling like worldwide. Like I think they said it's at this point close to 200 million copies in like 2 or 3 years. That thing's becoming a massive success. You got other manga that's selling like hundreds of millions of copies and tens of millions in the United States. So when you're selling that volume and the anime is really popular too, it begs the question, why aren't the same pop culture audience that then goes and watches the superhero movies, why aren't they buying the comic books? And the only thing I can come up with is that the comic books are being written in design and drawn in a way that they're almost unapproachable, not necessarily in terms of like the characters themselves, but in terms of the story arcs, the stories being told, or the version of the characters different. You know, there's this easy entry point, this easy point of access to manga because you're so familiar with the story from the anime when you jump into the manga. Or like I got a buddy of mine, he wants to start getting manga for an ongoing series that he's currently watching because he wants to read ahead and see what he can expect, the anime, where it's going to go, right? Because he wants to read the manga so that when the anime catches up to that point, he's like, oh, I can't wait for this to happen, right? There are people that do that. It's such an ease of access into that medium that it just makes it super easy to get, sucked into that world, both in the print and animated form. If you try to pick up a Batman book or an Aquaman book or, Spider-Man book, even a Miles Morales one, it's going to be very different than, going and playing the games or watching the movies. It's going to feel like night and day. So I think that's a huge thing, is there's such a barrier to entry in comic books. And the only solution they came up with was, let's just reboot it like once every couple of years. But that's not going to solve it, because then you're just stuck with it.
Worse.
Yeah, it just makes it worse because the story changes like every couple of years. So then there's no consistency. The best thing to do.
And then I'm opening it like, wait, what the fuck? Wasn't Spider-Man like a different color last year? What is going on? Like, where do I start?
Yeah, where's this
Which
Miles
is
Morales
the
guy I was reading
Spider-Man?
last year? Who's this, like, there's, I don't know if you're aware that there's a future version. There's like 20 different Spider guys, right? But like there's a future version of Spider-Man 2, like Spider-Man 2099. So like there's all sorts of different versions of Spider-Man. So like any book they're coming out with, they'll be like, just like, okay, there's a couple different versions of Ghost Rider. I'm a big Ghost Rider fan, but Johnny Blaze, most of the aspects of, if you were to go read the original Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider comics, they're not very much like the movies. Most of the movies take visual influence from the Danny, I want to say his name is Danny Keys from the 90s. That he's the one that had like the flaming motorcycle and like the really punk rock kind of like, gothic kind of, outfit. Really, originally the Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider, he just had a Daredevil outfit on and he had a flaming head, and that was it. He was just riding a regular old motorcycle. But they just took aspects of other Ghost Riders and combined them for the movies. And then when they redid Johnny Blaze in the comics later, one of the reasons why you could go pick up those comic books and you could make heads or tails and sense of what was going on was because they had changed Johnny Blaze to look like the movies. The story's a little weird, it's a little bizarre, but it's a heck of a ride artistically. I'm always going to recommend this book. Go check out Garth Ennis and Clayton Crane's Ghost Rider. I forgot the subtitle to the series. I think when they did the trade paperback, it might have just been called Ghost Rider, but it might have a subtitle to it. But go to like Barnes and Noble or Amazon or wherever you buy your books at, and just look for Ghost Rider by Clayton Crane and Garth Ennis. Dude, like there's some gnarly artwork in there by Clayton Crane, some beautiful, like crazy, like hellscapes of like Ghost Rider just riding around and like these like hellish areas and stuff, and doing all sorts of stuff, and weird characters, crazy characters, and just stuff you can't even get in the movies. Just the plots, it's okay, it needs some work. It feels like one of the ones where they phoned it in a little bit, but the art just carries the story. If you like shots of like Ghost Rider shooting flaming out of his mouth, like grabbing bad guys and stuff like that with it, and it's pretty cool. And then of course I think Daniel Way did some pretty cool Ghost Rider stories, so you can look for that too. But those are books that sort of, you can read that and plot wise are going to be different, but they kind of in line with that. They stopped doing that. They stopped tying in. DC Comics tried it with Wonder Woman, where they redid her costume to look like the Gal Gadot Wonder Woman costume from the first Wonder Woman movie in Batman v Superman. They altered her costume to look like a mirror of that, but they didn't really change how they were telling the story. So it was only half the issue, right? Like they weren't trying to I'm just saying I think that's a problem. I think they need to, if they want to, fix it, you got to look in the right area and stop looking in the wrong area. but I just wanted to talk about that since we were on manga anyway. I do want to transition to one last topic, which I'm kind of interested to get your opinion on, Leo. So tell me, I know you haven't finished it yet, but having played some of Resident Evil 8, what's your current view of this Resident Evil game? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? If you do like it, what are things you like about it? And what are things you dislike about it?
I love it because it's fun. I think that's fun is generally something that people forget about in making these AAA games, and this is fun. It's not. I've heard that it has shooting mechanics from the '90s. I don't really give a shit. Halo does too. Well, not really, but you get it. You know what I mean? Halo's not really the most up to date of the shooting mechanics, and I still play Combat Evolved 20 years later. I mean, there's really nothing else to say. I love it. I love the horror aspects. I think it's better than number 7 in many ways. Because you have more variety of enemies, and they really just fucking went over the top. It's hilarious to me. I think it's really funny. And I don't know, in like a really meta way. Because Resident Evil's always been incredibly just anime and Japanese and over the top. But this one kind of just like buys into it in a different way. And I love that. But at the same time, it can still have some scenes in there that are chilling. It's more like an interactive movie than anything. But, you know, the puzzles are still fun enough, and I'm having a lot of fun. There you go. And the second house was great. That was fucking great. That was awesome.
Now, okay, I represent the viewpoint of the casual Resident Evil fan who's played a few Resident Evil games, not a super hardcore Resident Evil fan, and I'm looking from the outside inward and basically questioning whether or not I should be interested in buying this game. I hear a lot of great praise for the game, but here's the thing. Is the praise just fanboy praise, or is it like genuinely, like, is it earned? And so I've watched a few reviews. I try to get, diversified reviews, because it's hard to just watch one or two reviews. You got to really watch a lot to get a general consensus about what's good, what isn't, kind of thing. Or, because sometimes people, their nostalgia for a franchise can cloud their judgment. So you got to figure out who are the huge diehard fanboys and who are just the middle of the road guys that are going to give you like their straight opinion of the game. So I'm always like, looking for those type of reviews that just give you their opinion of like what's good, what's bad. But you do want to look at a fan's perspective, because they can catch things that someone who isn't a hardcore can. They'll be like, well, why this is good is because it references, or it's a callback to this or whatever. That stuff's important, fan service, obviously. And my general view, and I'm going to wait to buy it. Like that's where I stand right now, is I'm not going to buy it at full price. I might not even buy it at 50% like off. I might wait and kind of like try it out when it's a lower price point, because I hear the game's not incredibly long. It's like it's a little bit on the short side, which is fine. I don't mind short games, but I'm seeing a ton of footage that just makes me think like in as a game fan that's been playing video games for a long time now, I'm always interested to see how developers are going to try to innovate or try to do something interesting, especially with an established franchise. You want to see them try to push the envelope. Even if a game's fun, that's great. That's the first thing you want a game to be, is you want a game to be fun. You want to have fun with it. And you want the story to be at least decent. I've heard the story, like, either you love it or you hate it. That's what the consensus I'm getting from it, is people either love the story or they hate it. So it's kind of debate 50-50, toss a coin up in the air for that. But for RE8, in terms of like the gameplay, the boss fights, all this kind of stuff, for $60, and in some cases, we're seeing the industry might be moving toward $70 games now, for all we know. That could become the new standard in a few years. So when we expect a certain type of product from this, should we keep expecting games that, especially, certain games that you want them to be a step above the rest? And I think famous franchises are like they should be like the up in front as those games that have established big time fan bases. They should be the ones leading the pack in setting the bar for others to follow. Like that's how I've always viewed big time franchises, which is why I have such a huge. I'm not going to go into it tonight, but I have such a strong opinion on Halo and why that franchise has to always innovate in some way. Like with each title, they have to do something that sort of like sets a, not necessarily, it doesn't have to set a huge industry trend, but they have to do something where it's not just we're copying and pasting from either older games or other franchises. It needs to be uniquely Halo, but it also needs to do something new. Like it has to be both a representation of what came before and a step forward at the same time. It's a hard thing to do, but for a long time, Halo was able to do that with every game, and then they stopped doing it.
Well,
And
I'll
I
say
think we all
this. I'll say this for Resident Evil before we get off of that. I'm kind
Well,
of like
I'm about to go back to it. I'm not done.
well, hold on. I'm kind of like a mid-tier fan of Resident Evil. I didn't play the first one. I owned it, but I didn't play it. I got in with the fourth one. So I would say as a mid-tier fan, I'm enjoying it. There is callbacks to number 4, which is the first one I played. So there's a little bit of nostalgia there, but there's also stuff that I just didn't play. Like I literally just played number 2 for the first time like 2 months ago with my wife. But I will say there's that, but then there's also the fact that it's one of those things is not getting to make it to set it apart from Halo, right? A lot of Halo's enjoyment is the gameplay. You see what I'm saying? So you do have to innovate there, and a lot of Halo's enjoyment is also the story as well. But it's a multiplayer game as well, so there's a lot of it's the gameplay. So you do have to innovate. But something like Resident Evil, and this is part of the reason why you can't watch it in videos and expect to get the experience. Watching the videos actively ruins the experience because what I said earlier was it's kind of like a movie. You're kind of like playing a movie because there's not really a lot of elements of choice to it, and so you're not going to see the little subtleties in gameplay. You're not going to get that. It's survival horror. So one of the things that a lot of people say that make the original Resident Evil games so terrifying is the fact that the controls suck so badly. And that's something that you can't really get from a video. The experience of a zombie walking up to you and you're like, holy fuck, how do I even aim? You know what I mean? And that kind of puts you in the shoes of the everyman trying to use a gun for the first time. And a lot of that, a lot of the enjoyment that I'm getting out of Resident Evil 8 is the off the wall shit that happens and you don't expect it. Like PT, you know what I mean? Like if you watched a video of PT and knew what to expect.
To be fair though, the puzzles in PT are like a grandmaster level puzzle compared to the puzzles in RE8.
Well, the puzzles in PT are grandmaster puzzles compared to every other game on earth. But the thing about it is that if you watched a video of PT, you're not going to get the experience because there's not really a lot of gameplay in PT. It's literally you just walk through a hall, which actually the second house in Resident Evil 8 is a lot like PT because you're really just walking through a house. They take away all your weapons and everything. You're literally walking through a house and like looking at things, trying to solve the puzzle that way. It really is a huge callback to PT actually. From the lighting, the sound effects, it's PT. But you see what I'm saying? Like you can't get that experience from watching it. You have to sit down and put yourselves in the shoes of the character in order to get that. And like I said, they don't really have to innovate on gameplay. And then also another thing I wanted to say before I forgot it as well, the last thing I was going to say was when it comes to the nostalgia factor, fanboy versus non-fan, when it comes to recommending it, the Resident Evil 7 and 8 are from the first person perspective, and they do go back to the survival horror aspects of Resident Evil. They took it away from the action, but they're also completely fresh takes on the franchise. So when it comes to like innovating and things like that, they don't really need to innovate a lot. I think that this one was more of an iteration of Resident Evil 7, whereas it took what made Resident Evil 7 enjoyable and just made it a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like Resident Evil 7 only had one type of enemy. This one changed that. You know what I mean? So just little things like that. Like I said, you just had to experience it. I would say maybe the game is on the shorter side because it feels like I'm getting to the end. But yeah, it's like a mid-tier fan. You just have to experience it, and you can't watch videos. Like reviews are one thing, but don't watch spoilers. Don't watch reviews. Part of the experience is literally just finding out what the fuck is going to happen next on your own.
I generally do not watch walkthroughs on anything because I don't want to ruin the experience. Because you can know stuff about a game from seeing stuff in a review. And then you go and play the game, and then it feels different. You're just seeing it on your own screen in your own playthrough. It's all different. But So I agree with you there. I have not watched any walkthroughs of RE8. What I've watched is just review footage, right? But and I'm not saying the game is trash. I haven't played it, so I can't in good conscience even make a claim like that. I guess what I'm saying is I feel like when you look at a game franchise like, Resident Evil 8, like look at RE7, people might think that I've already heard some people say they think Village blows away RE7. Well, I mean, that's fine. It's an opinion. I don't know. I haven't played RE8 yet, so I have to play it too to evaluate. But when I saw the trailers, the build up and everything for RE7, I was like, this looks like a game that's gonna really scare the living crap out of me. But also the atmosphere, the story, like everything was so intriguing. It was captivating. I mean, it sucked me in. I wanted to know more. I wanted to see what was causing all this mayhem. And I feel like there's just less intrigue with Village. I feel like there's so much more that's directly kind of explained almost explicitly, like very like, yeah, there's always a twist, and I don't really know the full twist to RE8, but I did get accidentally spoiled a little bit on parts of it, but I don't know the full twist at the end. But there's just not like immediately like going into it, the advertising, the marketing, the gameplay demos, and also I am not captivated by this like obsession with the vampire boss lady. I don't get it. It's beyond me. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I don't get it. You know what I mean? Like, I understand, but it makes like very little sense to me in the grand scheme of things.
She's in like the first hour of the game, and then
I know she's
never
from what I
talked
understand,
about it
she's
again.
barely in the game. So like,
She's not even. She's just 1/4 of the boss
but
characters.
but she's already like she's like the next like iconic Mr. X type character that everybody is aware of, and I don't know. It's I find it interesting.
I mean, she was a meme. You know what I mean? That's about
Well,
it.
she became a meme. She became like kind of infamous first and then a meme, and then it just grew from there. But people who haven't even seen game footage know who that character is now. And she got cosplayed up the bazoo. So I mean, like, goodness sakes. But I don't know. I think RE8, just my raw opinion, is I don't feel comfortable spending more than $30 on it as of right now. That's my current opinion. But my opinion is not that the game sucks, because I can't say that because I haven't played it. I feel like it should be making me way more interested in it. I should be getting more anticipation about playing it. I guess I was expecting a little bit more, even going in with low expectations. The first reveal trailer intrigued me, but all the trailers and advertisement after that just kind of, I lost interest in it. So that's my little rant about RE8. So Leo, having played the game and already given your opinion, what do you think of what I just said? Like, you obviously said, it's a game you have to experience, but why do you think that there is like what is the most captivating thing about the game for you, and why do you think people like me who have my opinion aren't seeing it? Like, they're not seeing that thing that, like, or why do you think they failed to showcase it in their marketing or advertising for the game?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I didn't really look at a lot of the marketing, to be honest with you. I wasn't on the internet that much in this last year. But so I just knew the game was coming out. And actually, I bought it on the day that it came out. I had no idea it came out. I just like literally randomly logged into Xbox, and then it was like, oh, Resident Evil 8. And I was like, oh shit, that's out already? All right, I'm gonna try it. Cause I really wanted to play it. But I mean, honestly, I couldn't tell you why it didn't captivate you, and it captivated other people. Obviously, the tall ass lady's a meme. So it captivated a lot of people. I don't know why it would or wouldn't captivate you, but who's to say why anyone likes any specific things, for any reason? I mean, I couldn't tell you why you like superheroes over anti-heroes or something like that, or why you like cats over dogs. I mean, you could give some specific reasons, but for the most part, a lot of it's subjective. So I don't know.
You know what it was? I figured it out. And you can play off of this because you've played the games. Whether or not Resident Evil 7 really scared me, even in the marketing. when I watched the marketing for Resident Evil 8, I never got scared. I never like was like, oh, I'm gonna be like, because there's some horror games like PT, and there's another one out there that's really good right now. If you guys haven't heard of it, check it out. It's really, you got to stick with it. Okay, it's one of those games you got to really just stick with it all the way through. It's called Visage. It's really, really good. Very experimental, but I like it. But anyway, yeah. Games like those, games like PT, Visage, RE7, and other games, they very directly, clearly, I got scared of like thinking like I am going to have to walk through these halls or go explore this area and something's going to be hunting me. When I saw everything for RE8 and everything I have seen, makes me feel like it's not, I don't get that feeling.
Did you see the PT section?
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Talking about the baby, right?
The entire house. It's not just the baby. The baby's like 2 minutes of the house. That entire stage right there to me was, because you don't have weapons for the entire stage. That's it. And it's to me it was very much reminded me of PT. But yeah, I would say that that's something that I honestly did. Like I said, I didn't see a lot of marketing for it, but I didn't see that marketed. All I saw from marketing was the tall lady. You know what I mean? So I thought that was going to be the whole game. And I wondered why, it's Resident Evil, so I kind of know what to expect at this point, but you know what I mean? I didn't expect that. I thought that was a real nice treat to see PT show up halfway through the game. And also, It's kind of good I didn't see the marketing, because that PT thing, the baby, all that, which is a callback to the baby in PT, all that took me by surprise. So that just made it 10 times more enjoyable.
Well, they never. I don't remember them showing that at all. And maybe they should have showed that, but they didn't. They kept showing, like, every time I saw a trailer or an ad, it was just vampire lady, vampire lady, vampire lady. And
that's good, because that's only the first hour of the game.
I know, but I
the rest on your
when
own.
You see Mr. Baker busting through the wall and stalking you through the house, and you're defenseless in the RE7 like preview.
That's the first hour of the game.
I know,
Resident Evil 7.
Game, but it's freaking creepy, right? Like, and it sucks you in. You're like, oh, this game's got atmosphere, it's got immersion. There's like, I mean, maybe other than the house, other than that house, that's the PT house. Where did you ever feel this huge sense of immersion in the game? Because I just never saw any in the footage I've seen. But again, okay, I've heard the game is 8 to 9 hours long. I've probably, of the actual game, through reviews and all the different things I've seen, I might have seen maybe 2 hours of footage.
I'm going to say I feel immersion throughout the whole game. I'm pretty well immersed. I'm enjoying myself. I'm reading all the little text and, you know what I mean, checking every nook and cranny to see if I missed anything. I already plan to go through the game a second time, because that's how Resident Evil games are enjoyed. You beat it the first time, then you beat it the second time. What was the other question? I guess you said, do you feel immersed? And what else was the other part of that? I don't know.
Well, I guess the only other part of that is
how short it was. Yeah. Also, I really like, there's also the fact that I really don't have a lot of time to play games these days, but I generally take my time with games. I've heard of people beating Call of Duty in like literally 6 hours, like in one sitting in a playthrough. I've never done that with the game in my entire life.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It always takes me longer because I don't like rushing the experience. So that is one thing that will play to my advantages. If I do play Village at some point in the near future, I'm not going to rush it. Games. I take my time.
Even Call of Duty games take at least a week from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I had a couple friends tease me about how long it took me to beat the Cold War campaign, even though it's like really short. And it's like, no, I did literally everything in that campaign. I did all the side missions. I did all the investigations and the evidence collecting.
See, that was one game I couldn't get into. So what happened was I bought Cold War a week before I bought Resident Evil 8. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to try to get in this game. You know what I mean? Because I used to love the old Call of Duties. I haven't really loved a Call of Duty since I was younger. But I tried to get into it. I couldn't get into it. I literally got to like the 3rd or 4th level. Don't really
Dude,
remember what that
you
was.
got to
And
keep
then
playing it. There's a level toward the. I'm not going to spoil. In fact, I might do a video on just this one Call of Duty level. But all my friends told me about this. They said there's a level in the Cold War campaign that is so messed up. Like they've never done it before in a Call of Duty game, like on this scale or on this in this way. It's okay. This is going to sound silly because we've mentioned PT so much. This is as close as you're ever going to get to seeing a PT style moment in a Call of Duty game. It's really cool. It's
maybe.
unique. It's ambitious. And you know
But then
what? The thing that makes me so excited about this is I found out I thought Treyarch did the campaign for this game, but they didn't. They actually did not work on the campaign at all, from what I understand. Maybe just supplying a few extra functions to, but Cold War's development, and we're going to transition now because we're on Cold War, so let's just fully transition to it, and we'll end on this topic. So we'll each give our thoughts real quick about this, and then we'll wrap up the show for the night. But one thing I think is interesting is this is how it happened from my understanding, is that you've got Sledgehammer Games. They're working on at some point in iteration of Call of Duty Cold War. And that game, whatever version of that, it wasn't going to go through. And with about a year and a half to just close to 2 years left in the game's like development cycle, it's decided to hand the game over to Treyarch and some of their affiliate studios, like Raven Software and other stuff. Now, Raven has only ever been a support studio before. In Call of Duty games, they traditionally don't usually, from my knowledge of their inner workings within Call of Duty as a franchise, they've never done anything except like support roles. They were the ones that did the campaign. So I don't know. Now, the story was, I believe, co-written by, I could be wrong, but I want to say the story was co-written by David S. Goyer, who helped write both Black Ops 1 and Black Ops 2. So if some of these ideas were his, kudos to him. If it was the team at Raven who came up with these ideas, kudos to them. But needless to say, this is a fantastic campaign. It's on the short side. It has multiple endings. That there's actually missions where you're like it's kind of like it's not an open world, but it's kind of like open-ended because you can there's several different outcomes to different missions. They're like dialogue choices, and you can collect evidence, and you can open up secret missions to do later. Well, they're not technically secret, but if you don't collect the evidence, if you don't do your due diligence. One of my favorite things to do is trying to crack the floppy disk, which I successfully did, but you have to and the fun thing is, do it. Don't look up solutions. Really spend time figuring it out. And actually, because there are codes and cipher. It's not technically a cipher, but you can call it one if you want, just to keep it short. But they're codes and stuff, and they're unique to you, to your gameplay. They're not just a universal code that anyone can go online and punch in. No, there's a point where you have to name suspects in an investigation of who's a sleeper agent, who's not. Those sleeper agents, it's the same set of sleeper agents, but who is the actual right choice is completely different, based on your playthrough. It's just randomly generated from the game for you. So there's some really cool stuff that they did in that game. And the mission itself is so cool. It's so unique. I'm going to play through, and I think I've experienced 2 different versions of that mission. Supposedly there's 7 different little things that can happen, and 4 ultimate outcomes to the mission. I'm going to play all through and find all 4 of them. And when I've done that, I want to do a video on that, because that mission was it is nutsy, dude. It really messes with your head. And a friend of mine once told me, when describing the mission to me, he's it makes you question what's even real. It's really good. It really plays with the idea of 80s Cold War mind control, stuff like that. It's really good. It's kind of you played BioShock, right, Leo?
no, I didn't get to play that one back in the day.
Okay, then I'm gonna refrain from saying this, but if anyone watching this, if you've ever played or heard of BioShock and you know what happens at the end of that game, without spoiling it, it sort of reminded me of that. It really gave me a BioShock vibe when the plot twist happens at the end of Cold War. I didn't I knew some stuff about Cold War, but I didn't see this coming. And when I experienced it, I was just sitting there and I was along for the ride, and it was amazing. It was so much fun. So, real quick, Leah, why don't you tell me, like, what about Cold War? Because you said you started playing it, but then you kind of lost interest in it. So, what was it about the game, whether it be the zombies multiplayer campaign, that just didn't really get you interested?
Well, for me, I mean, I used to play Call of Duty for a different reason than what the modern Call of Duties are. I mean, I appreciate the direction that the Black Ops games have gone into. You know, the whole branching multiple stories and stuff. You know, I appreciate that, and I want to like it. But my thing ultimately is I like it more leaning to the milsim side. You know what I mean? My favorite first person shooter one of my favorites is Operation Flashpoint. You know, it has fucking realistic bullet drop and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, I love that game. I really liked from Modern Warfare the last one that came out. Kind of like the sneak and peek kind of missions. You know, you kick down the door.
You're talking about the Silent House mission?
Yeah, the CQC stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of like that. It's not realistic. It's not milsim, but it's more grounded.
It's as close as Call of Duty will ever get to that type of stuff.
You know what I mean? It's more grounded. I like those kinds of stories when it comes to, military games. And Black Ops is, the Treyarch games in general are just always like complete fucking Michael Bay. Like, it's just shit that just really takes me out of the fucking game. You know what I mean? You see like 30
there's
Vietnamese,
Michael Bay moments in this campaign, but
every second of the 4 missions I played were literal just napalm exploding. It's like the things that take me out of the game. It's like you see 10. So there's one mission, right? It's you and one other dude. You get dropped off in a helicopter in the middle of a city that's like erupting in gunfire.
You're talking about like Operation Fracture Jaw, which is set in Vietnam, right?
Yeah, the one in Vietnam. And like there's like 10 NVA dudes, and I'm playing it on hard because that's how I play Call of Duty games. And there's like 10 NVA guys standing just in the middle of the road, just standing there, firing at you, fully automatic. You take down all these guys that are 10 feet in front of you, and they're all standing in the middle of the road. And then you guys just like knock down this whole compound, and it's like this. And there's just explosions everywhere. You know, you're flying around in these helicopters, explosions everywhere. It's complete Michael Bay, and it just takes me out of the game. And it's not to criticize it, because like I said, the story wise, Black Ops games are actually really interesting. You know what I mean? From Black Ops 1 to all of them, you know, I actually do like a lot of the ideas, and I really want to like the game, but I get taken out by, you know, the execution of what I call the B team Call of Duty games. You know what I mean? I just get taken out by the execution. You know, I mean, it's not like the Modern Warfare games. Like Modern Warfare 3, I actually didn't like that game either, because it was like that. You know, it was just way too much going on every second the Modern Warfare 2 just had this grounded feeling to it. That was like the last Call of Duty campaign I really, really liked.
There's a lot of Hollywood moments in that campaign.
Oh no, there's a lot of Hollywood moments, but the moment to moment action, you know, and I think that's what made it good, was the balance. You know, of course,
I think the atmosphere was nailed better, as what you're saying, because like I know what you're talking about. Yes, there's Hollywood moments, and yes, it is a lot of like one man versus the world. But let me tell you, the freakish, like kind of frightening atmosphere of running through the favela with every guy jumping out of every window and every rooftop.
And that's another thing. Yeah, like, that's a good point. That's a good point right there. Yeah, that's another thing to add to my point. Keep going.
No, I was just gonna say, like, that was really good, and I also like. I know it is a very, like, we're going to use the Michael Bay term. It is a very Michael Bay mission, but the hopelessness. I'm not talking about the favela. I'm talking about different.
Okay.
The hopelessness on the mission, just like old times, where it's just you and Price, and you feel like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the end of the line. If we don't do this,
exactly,
like, it's over. We're screwed. Like, we're the last line of defense. We
this
gotta
is like
do this.
off the books and I'm fucked after we do this. You know what I mean? Like that it was grounded enough to make it like, okay, I'm invested, and it's at the end of the game. So now you're already invested. You know what I mean? And the favela, one thing I used to love that Call of Duty used to do, because I got into Call of Duty back with the World War II games, was it used to take either real battles or movies and try to make you experience those. So the favela levels that you were playing in Modern Warfare 2, that was literally just Black Hawk Down. That was literally just Black Hawk Down in Brazil. They read the book Black Hawk Down and then tried to recreate that, which is why you see the multiple levels and the civilians running through the street, and everywhere you go, someone just pops out of a window. You're not fighting like regular army. It's just like literally just dudes hanging out of a window, take 3 shots at you and run away. You know what I mean? That they were really trying to recreate what the soldiers in Black Hawk Down felt. And then, of course, you got the Rangers on D-Day and stuff like that. And there's like different things that were meant to mimic things that you're familiar with if you are interested in military history at all. And the new Call of Duty games don't really do that as much. You know what I mean? It feels like they're just trying to just go balls to the wall. And what I was saying earlier, like the moment to moment action of up to Modern Warfare 2, it was crazy. There was a lot of shooting and everything going on, but it wasn't like just literal fireballs on every inch of the map with guys standing in your face. It felt like enemies took cover a lot more. The sight lines were a little bit longer because that's a little bit more realistic. You know, if you ever watch real war footage, you don't actually see your enemies. They're hiding too. You know what I mean? You're hiding they're hiding.
They stand up. They're the rookies that just got drafted on the other side. Like every other guy is taking cover. Or even if you look at old Vietnam footage, they are up in the buildings in the windows hiding, shooting at you in Way City. It's
and that's one thing that just really takes me out. I don't know what it is about the AI of the Treyarch games. I know you said it wasn't really Treyarch, but I just, you know what I mean by the B team games, but they just like really love to have enemies just stand in the middle of the fucking hallway and just shoot at you. And it's like, why? Make them take cover. Make them hard to see. Make the sight lines longer. Like make this challenging. You know what I mean? The way they see to make things challenging is just throw more enemies on screen. You know what I mean?
that is a problem I have with a lot of games now. They're getting lazy about their challenges. Instead of doing great level design, it's just just more enemies. That's it. That's all we got to do. You know, that was one of my big complaints for a while there with Destiny. That's all they were doing with that game. I'm not going to get on a rant about Destiny, but I'm just going to say for a long time, it seemed like the only thing they were doing was just, let's not make something interesting or complex. Like, if something's hard, like let it be a fun hard where you're excited to try to conquer the challenge. Whereas it's like, no, let's just throw enemies at you constantly. So to the point where you want to throw your controller is just so annoying. Not because you're like, you feel like it's a challenge, but it's so frustrating. And Destiny did that for a while. They kind of moved away from it a little bit, but they always have that potential to dip right back in. So, Call of Duty's the same way. There are missions where they're just throwing enemies at you.
Grenades.
But,
the grenades
let me tell you,
the
dude, I'm saying it. Anyone out there, I'm gonna be very, very frank with you guys. There's a lot of reasons to not play the new Cold War game. Because aspects of that game, like aspects of the multiplayer, I feel like they could be a lot better. I love the zombies. Zombies is amazing in that game. Like it's the best zombie since Black Ops 2, hands down. But I'm just gonna say this: that mission that I talked about earlier, it's worth it. I mean that mission alone, I had so much fun with it. I was so blown away that they had a mission like that in Call of Duty and how crazy and unique and cool it was that I've actually felt like I got at least half the price of the game. Like if I only played that mission and zombies, I actually would feel like I got like a $40 to $50 value out of the game. And then
it's worth the slog, because that's how I see playing that game. It's like a slog.
Dude, there's a mission where you infiltrate KGB headquarters, and it's like it's not a very shooty thing. It's a mission that I'm not going to spoil it for you, Leo, but it actually connects the world of Modern Warfare and Cold War together in the same universe.
I had a feeling they'd do that.
You said you hate when they do that?
No, I had a feeling they would do that. Something was telling me that it's going to connect.
Yeah, they actually tie the narratives together. And
I saw that coming because the mission I got up to was when they're in the KGB place and they were you get to see like their training grounds or whatever. Do you know which one I'm talking about? It's you and like what's his name, Hudson, I think. And you like literally get to see like how they have an American city set up in a shoot
that's you
house.
and Woods when they're in
Woods,
the
yeah.
that's it, that when they're in the that's called the mission Red Light Green Light is the name of
Yeah,
the
that
mission.
one. That's the one where I
You
got up
you
to.
stealth your way into it. By the way, it's one of my favorite missions in the game. I love that.
Yeah, I got up to that one, and like I said, I just wasn't feeling the whole vibe. I didn't hate the game. I was gonna beat it, but the thing was, Resident Evil came out. I didn't even know Resident Evil was coming out. Because I haven't been paying attention, but Resident Evil came out. And I said, oh well, I'm gonna go return this game and go get Resident Evil. And that's really what I did. I used the 50 something bucks that I spent on Black Ops and just put it towards Resident Evil and got that. I usually don't buy games new. I buy them used. It's just why I was able to return it. But then I was like, fuck it, I'll just download Resident Evil, and that's what ended up happening.
But Leo, when you get, not you don't have to rush, but when you get a chance, when you get some time and you're done with Resident Evil, go back, play through the campaign. You don't have to play anything else or play it again afterwards. But when you get to the mission, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is trippy. It is really
I do
trippy.
appreciate that Black Ops tries to do new things. Like one thing in Black Ops 2, they had that kind of like almost like an RTS thing going on. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was in Black Ops 2. There's futuristic missions that they had, and they would have like these in between missions that would affect.
Oh,
the
you're
story.
talking about the little side missions where you would go and do these like side ops and stuff like that.
Kind of like side ops, but then like it had like an RTS map to it. You know, like where you're looking top down.
Yeah, where you're
like Halo
coordinating
Wars.
units and stuff.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Like I really do appreciate like the way that Black Ops innovates, you know, and I do plan to go back to the game, but it's just the Michael Bay aspects that ruined Modern Warfare 3 for me. That kind of like leaves a weird taste in my mouth when it comes to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's some like really for me, if you look at it as a trilogy, Black Ops, Cold War is set between Black Ops 1 and 2, obviously. So if you look at Black Ops, Cold War, Black Ops 2, as it stands right now, fantastic trilogy. I know some people like to still consider this game canon. I don't consider it canon, even though it technically is. But I don't consider Black Ops 3 to be canon. It kind of like goes a little overboard in terms of like. But
I was playing that like a couple of weeks ago. Actually,
let me tell you this. What I do like about Black Ops 3 is they did try something new. They were ambitious. I mean, they were really ambitious. Did it pay off? Debatable. It's just they left too much of it. You know, Call of Duty isn't the kind of game where you get to be overly subtle. You kind of have to explain a few things because the audience that plays those games, I mean, this ain't Spec Ops The Line, right? Like completely different type of core audience here. This ain't like a Hideo Kojima game where you can leave a lot of stuff in subtlety. It's a Call of Duty game. So my only complaint with them doing a Cyberpunk game was they left a lot of it to subtlety. And it took me years to fully understand what the true story of Black Ops 3 was. Because I wasn't looking up like those videos where people who are no lives, they like no life the game, they no life all of the aspects of the game, and then they make a video being like, you know, the real story of this game. Like I didn't actually watch that for Black Ops 3. I didn't do any of that kind of stuff. So when I finally understood what Black Ops 3's story was, I was like, okay, I appreciate what they tried to do, just not solid execution. Black Ops 1, 2, Cold War, solid execution in terms of what they were going for. And I'm just amazed that Cold War turned out as good as it did with as many innovative ideas as it did, considering that for the most part, the campaign team didn't even have a full 2 years of development. I mean, we're talking about like just over a year full development. And then, of course, you know, they had to deal with the pandemic and all that kind of stuff. But and all the actors had to be like mocapped from their homes, looking into like a general camera, and it's just amazing that the game turned out as good as it had every reason to be a failure, and it didn't. So I kind of want to like
that.
I want to wrap up the Cold War discussion there, and we're just about approaching the 2 hour mark. So I do want to kind of like bring down the stream here and kind of close it out. So Leo, first off, it feels so good to be able to talk to you again in a live stream. It's been so long since we had a chance to just, you know, like hang out and do this. So it's a real blast, man.
Oh, it's been a while. It's good to talk to you as well.
And you know, do you have any final thoughts? Anything you want to discuss real quick, briefly before we head off?
Well, I'm gonna say this. I made my wife play Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 1 when they got remastered a couple years ago. And Black Ops 3 was free on the PlayStation for a while. And I played it and I asked my wife, what does this game look like to you? She said, I don't know. I don't even know what this game is. I said, what if I told you this is a Call of Duty game? She goes, what? This isn't a fucking Call of Duty game. Mind you, all she's seen is the old ones. And then I put on Modern Warfare. I said, what game am I playing right now? She goes, oh, that's Call of Duty. I know what that is. I don't think she ever saw Modern Warfare, the new one, but she knew. And I don't know. She just there's a conception of what a Call of Duty game should be. And Black Ops 3 didn't fit it, even though I could see what you're saying about some of it being kind of interesting, which is kind of why I went back before they took it off the PlayStation. But that's it.
Well, I appreciate you throwing in that little bit there. And I have so many things I'd love to talk to you about, but maybe we'll get a chance to do another stream sometime in the near future. We can talk about those ideas then. I have been playing some games that I'm very anxious to talk to you about. And I've seen some really cool movies I'd love to break down with you. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do that. Thanks everybody for that's either watched a piece of this live at all, any of it live, or anyone who's watching this, as like a video, I guess, what do they call it? VOD, video on demand, whatever. After the fact, whatever they call those files that you put up afterwards. But if you're watching this on my channel afterwards, thank you. And hey, if you enjoyed this, don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. Anyway, we'll be back hopefully, sometime not too far off. I don't think I could stand another break like the one we just had. But things happen. So anyway, we had a great time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.